You missed it, Ryan. Right as Cam was logging in, I dropped my headphones and said mother, so it looked like I was calling him a mother. It's pretty funny.
Well, that's the cold open sorted.
No, unfortunately, I wasn't recording
I
yet.
think he was recording.
We'll have to just stage it then, mate. I can't believe you don't record from the minute you sign on. That's just
from the moment I sign on.
Yeah, that's just unprofessional. You don't know what could happen.
This is true.
There might be some things getting recording that you're like, oh shit, why did I record that? Hey everyone, welcome back to Watch More Football. As always, you're watching us on the Joyverse Sports YouTube channel. So check that out. All our previous shows are on there, but you're probably watching thinking about the Premier League and football as has recently happened, as in this week's games, and that's what we're going to be discussing this week. I'm Cam, that's Ryan, and we've got producer Kel, as always, in the background. Talking about producer Kel, you can also check more of his lovely work on the anime side, reactions, reviews, all that sort of stuff. Tons of content on there on our main Genreverse YouTube channel. You'll also find some stuff like Wheel of Time on there, Andor. You'll find me on them along with Kel. And you'll find similar content to that on lrmonline.com. Written articles, I'm on there. Kel stuff's on there. And other guys that work for lrmonline.com as well. We've got loads of interviews as well that get posted on there, and they all go up on the LRM YouTube channel as well from our interview team. So lots of that kind of content. But today we are focused on the old Socceroo, or as everyone else likes to call it in the world.
We're talking about the Australian
football
team, are we?
Hold on.
Yeah, I was going to say, as everyone else likes to call it football, and then I was thinking, I was almost said Scottish way and said football.
I heard something about that. Okay, I heard that you guys over there in Britain on the were the ones that coined soccer. And now you're all pissy whenever someone doesn't use it.
So I think it's, and I'm really talking out my arse to an extent here, but soccer is short for association football.
And
I would imagine that the people who were calling it soccer as an abbreviation of that were the toffs writing about it rather than the working class people going and watching it.
Okay. What's association football versus...
It
was the rules of the
official
game.
name for the
that
sport
was the first
in the 1800s.
Okay.
Remember that?
You have to realise so much of this started in the Victorian
It's
era.
like
this also gets
between...
into the argument is where it started, because there was recently proof that the oldest football pitch found anywhere is in Scotland. But anyway, in terms of putting the rules together and actually making a league, this is the rules. We're going to have teams. That happened in England in the
1800s, mid 1800s.
Yeah.
So a lot of the language is obviously covered by that as well. So
so the Scottish gave us one of the most boring sports in the world with golf, and then you gave us like the second most boring sport in the world with soccer.
It's
there's not much to do in Scotland. And the weather's not that good. So you invented like surfing because you had like good weather and waves. We invented hitting something with a stick and kicking a sheep's guts round about that you've blew up with you.
I mean, England also invented a game that needs 5 days of uninterrupted sunshine and then decided to play it in England. So
yeah. I mean, maybe they just the summer they invented it was cricket. Just a good summer. Cricket.
Oh, it requires 5 days.
Yeah.
So like because like multiple matches and one game.
No. Sure. One match takes 5 days.
Oh my God!
Was rugby invented in England? I'm assuming it was.
Yeah.
Or Scotland, one of the two. And that kind of obviously all these became your sports as well, because it's not like you guys.
Just one more thing to really wind Kyle up.
Different rules.
One more thing to really wind Kyle up about cricket is so Test match is the traditional format that takes 5 days, and at the end of those 5 days, there still might not be a winner, and they just leave it.
Why do we let you guys do anything?
It was a game, cricket, very much of the upper class, and these were people who didn't actually have jobs. They just earned money by all the people that were paying them rent for all the property they owned and all that. So they literally...
These were the first people to want participation trophies. God, again, you guys just suck.
They just needed something to do with their afternoons, and they had lots of money, and that's what it was. Anyway, that's why football was always the working class game, because anyone could play it anywhere. On to our football, and we're going to start off as always with our predictions league, which kind of not a lot happened, but Dave did get a point on me, so good for him, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, it was we'll call it a weekend of surprise results, shall we? To be kind to everyone. But Dave just about extended his lead over Cam and Mick with 4 points. Kyle and I again leading more to the theory that it was a weekend of unexpected results. We both got 5. We were the only 2 to actually predict a correct scoreline as well. So Kyle is looking on course for his 200 points. I have got a lot of ground to make up. It's got to be said.
Don't think there's much more to say yet. We've only got 2 match days left now. Yeah. It's obviously it's Dave's to lose.
Cam has been trying to sort of initiate some security protocols to make sure there's no funny business.
Just to make
some fairness. Dave and Mick roundly ignored that, which I respect.
I did notice that. But at least, like, for the sake of, like, my own sake, you can verify that I had sent mine to you.
Yeah, I mean, all you need,
before, so I didn't look at. Obviously, it would make sense for me to wait for Dave so I can change the scores. What we're getting at is that, let's say I post first and Dave just copies my scores, then he wins the league. He can't be beaten. So, and there was a bit of that did used to going back in the old days when we used to do this online, quite a bit. So anyway, nothing more to say about that.
I mean,
we'll see who wins.
We'll just move on.
We'll
talk about cricket some more.
No, please not.
Right.
As a Scotsman, it's not our sport. Team of the week,
yeah, cool, right. So in goal, we've got Aaron Ramsdale, who's had a tough time of it at Southampton this season. He's gone from, being in a title-winning Arsenal team to being binned off, and now, that's
title winning.
Well, title challenging.
That's better. Yeah.
But now he's obviously suffered the 3rd relegation of his career at a 3rd different club this season. But he did pull off some quite good saves against Man City. Southampton drew 0-0 with Man City and finally eclipsed Derby's record low points total. So they've now got 12 points and no one can take that away from them. And
it was such a surprise to do it against Man City.
I think it's the perfect game to do it because they literally... Everyone went into that ground, Southampton-wise, with we're going to eke out the worst 0-0 draw you've ever seen, and we're going to celebrate it like we've won the World Cup, and that's how it transpired. And it was the icing on the cake was Ruben Diaz having a moan afterwards, saying, "Oh, Southampton, they just defended too much. All they wanted to do was defend. I can't believe they didn't try and play." And it's just like,
cool. Why didn't they just let us get a couple of goals?
You've really shit house your way through a result
everyone else. Yeah.
And it's always Pep players who do that.
That annoyed me.
Yeah.
Because he's probably moaning about it, like, behind the scenes kind of thing.
Going back to
that's English football, and that's what's different from, like, Spanish football. That's the problem in Spanish football. When a big team goes to play a smaller team, they try and play football against them. Yeah. And unless they have one of those busy days, they just lose 2 or 3-0 easily. In England, if you do that, the other team are like, "No, we want to stay in this league and we will fight tooth and nail and use any dirty tactic we can think of to get a point today."
If Southampton had a few more of those, they might not be as much of a laughingstock,
It always happens, though, doesn't it, Ryan?
But I mean,
once the teteams get relegated, something lifts, like some of the pressure lifts, and they play a little bit better. And we saw that.
I mean, I remember what 15 years ago, maybe, when Pep was still at Barcelona and Celtic beat him, didn't they? And that was Celtic had about 12% possession or something, and everyone was saying it was a crime against football. Yeah. But anyway, I'll skip it. I'll skip to the centre back because Jack Stevens in Southampton. I had both centre backs from Southampton at first. But because both came up with goal line clearances, Stevens was a bit more impressive for me. So we've plumped for Stevens. Are you all right, Cam? Do you need to?
I think my cat's having a fit. So can you give me just like 5 minutes to
go for
check him?
Yeah, so I was saying while I was talking about Ramsdale, I was just going to go straight into Jack Stevens from Southampton, who was part of that rear guard. We originally had him and Taylor Harwood-Bellis, both the centre backs, in there because they both made goal line clearances. I thought I left Stevens in there when we decided to bin one, just because I thought Stevens' clearance was just a bit more impressive, to be honest. But fair. It was slim pickings between the two of them. Right back, we got our boy Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who was actually playing on the left against Man United, but he was just, all of the talk about him when he was at United was, oh, he's rubbish going forward, he's the best tackler in the league, but he can't go forward, and he was taking the piss on Sunday against United. He was spinning off people, he set up both the goals, he just... Yeah, really good performance. He's had a really good season.
If MD's wondering,
because I've got a lot of time for him.
If MD's wondering if Ryan's managed to get one past us again, I think I agree. Based on what I'd seen, he actually did have a great game, and the fact he did it against his old club, who deemed him surplus to requirements, I think, says quite a bit.
Coming up, and because he was on the left, he was coming up against the guy who replaced him, Nusayr Mazraoui, as well. So it's just a very narrative driven pick, but well deserved. I think he had a good game. Other centre back Dan Burn, who got a goal. What else did he do?
No, he didn't.
Did he
score?
Did he not? Did he not? I thought.
No, but he was man of the match in that game. He was just. I think. It's a game we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, I think, just in a minute, so I won't say too much about it at the moment. So I think I'll rave about the game he had at that point, so we can just move on to Mykolenko.
Yeah. Okay, so Vitaly Mykolenko at left back for Everton, who he scored Everton's first goal and just was, quite good all game. Fulham, from watching the highlights of Match of the Day, Fulham had the better of the game for a lot of it, and then Everton end up 3-1 winners. So, it was a bit of a...
As is the Moyes way.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, Mykolenko got the first goal there. Moving into midfield, we've got Amadou Onana, who came in for Yuri Tielemans and just really broke up play against Bournemouth really well. He just was everywhere on the pitch. I can't remember if he was involved in the goal, but he just, he wasn't.
I don't think so, but he stood out to me obviously only watching the highlights and stuff like that. But he definitely stood out to me as well as the one that was kind of driving Villa forward, breaking stuff up. I thought Bournemouth were poor.
Yeah.
Compared to what they have been previously in the season, but that's Bournemouth for you.
They have been poor for a little while now, haven't they?
If you compare that when they came to St James's Park and beat us 4-0, you know what I mean, which everybody was raving about how well they played, quite rightly, I think. But it's consistency. They can do that every now and again for a few weeks, and then they seem to tail off. And they're in a tail-off period at the moment, which actually it's a bad time of the season for them to do so.
And they're probably going to lose a couple of their players in the summer as well, aren't they?
Well, especially if they don't qualify for Europe, obviously. They are not in the Champions League race, but they're still very much in the race for maybe a last European place and stuff like that, which there's about 3 or 4 clubs kind of still possibly fighting for at the moment. And, given the season they've had, if they actually drop off and miss out in Europe, I think that would be poor, because at one point they were in the Champions League fight.
Yeah,
theoretically, and they have dropped off quite a bit.
Yeah, recently. I mean they've sort of surpassed their record points tally this weekend in the Premier League, which that's a big thing.
Makes sense.
But it is very much they haven't got the sort of squad that you can build on, because they are going to lose a couple of their better players in the summer, and it's it's hit and miss whether you're going to replace them, as Brighton will tell you. Next to him in midfield, next to Amadou Onana in midfield is Sandro Tonali, who definitely did score.
He definitely did score a goal.
Yeah.
I think there was. I will give an honourable mention to actually Caicedo for Chelsea, who was in the opposite losing team. But I think those two were the two best midfielders on the pitch. Caicedo did a lot of fouling that maybe shouldn't have got away with it all, fair enough. But I think the fact that Tonali did score,
Yeah.
and the way the game went, I think you've got to give him the nod.
Obviously, I think we'll talk about this just from how our conversation's gone this week in the group chat. We'll talk about this at the end of season wrap-up show that we're planning. But I think Tonali has moved ahead of Bruno and Joelinton as the best part of that midfield three. I think they work really well together as a group, but I think he's just sort of he's just making the difference in a way.
At the start of the season, no, he didn't quite work.
Yeah.
But since they've made him the deep one, that's when things have started working out better for him. And I think the three of them do suit each other quite well. And I think he's been the most consistent this season out of them. Bruno's maybe had better odd games, but certainly in our teams of the week, he's been the one that started to creep in there. And actually, Joe's at the odd one. I don't think Bruno's even been in it this year, to be honest.
I don't know if he's fallen off, but he's not made the same impact as he has previously. But I don't know how much.
Still playing well, but just not quite as many highlights.
But I don't know how much of that is. At the start of Bruno's time at Newcastle, he was far and away the best player in that squad, in much the same way that Bruno Fernandes is for us. And I just think the rest of the squad's maybe caught up with him, and he doesn't stand out as much. Not that he's any worse, but
some of his passing hasn't been as good recently. The last few weeks, some of his passing, which is usually a good part of his game, but he is still the most fouled player in the league this season. So he's a valuable asset. Put it that way.
Yeah. And then in the little number 10 role is Morgan Gibbs-White. Forest dropped points late onto Leicester, but Gibbs-White had a hand in both Forest goals. He got Forest's first off a header and then put in a really good cross for Chris Wood for the second. So he's in, and he's had an excellent season. And then we've been a bit cheeky in the front line. We've got Daniel Munoz at right wing. He is a right wing back, but the space that Spurs let him have, he was essentially a winger anyway. He must have made the same chance half a dozen times, and I think 4 times that the ball ended up in the back of the net, but only 2 counted in the end just because of offsides and that sort of thing.
He definitely deserves to be in
against Spurs.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else kind of deserved to make it in on the right wing slot this week.
No, but he also, he had a very good performance. And then on the other wing, again, we've slightly shoehorned him in, but Eberechi Eze, who scored the 2 goals that actually counted, but again, he just pulled the strings against Spurs for Palace, and they've got a cup final coming up, and they aren't letting up in the league, unlike some teams, so it's very impressive.
A bit too far back for Europe, though, which is due to their poor form earlier on in the season, not just now. But they've picked.
They win the cup final, and they've got Europa League.
That's true. Yeah, so that's their ticket in. Yeah.
And then up front, we've got Danny Welbeck, who scored, and I just thought he had a good all round game against Wolves. He was involved in a couple of chances prior to. It was a penalty he scored, but he had a goal ruled out as well before that.
He's also an ex-Man United player, so
and if we're talking about narrative and ex-Man United players, he for the first time in his long illustrious career has broken double figures for goals in a season, considering he's played for Man United and Arsenal for the last nearly 20 years. I think he made his debut in about 2008, and this is the first time that he's.
That's probably due to injuries, isn't it? More than actual skill or finishing, because it's always been an injury issues with Welbeck. So.
It is, and also at United and at Arsenal, he was never the main striker for either of those. He was either the substitute there for depth, or he was shunted out to the wing. So that didn't help.
Yeah.
But yeah, pleased to see him having a good season, and I'd take him back at United in a heartbeat.
Yeah, actually, you could do worse as your backup striker if you get a new striker next year.
There was very brief talk of that last summer, and it never happened. But
we'll
see.
I guess the kind of main focus for us this week is that kind of race for Europe, race for the Champions League. The biggest game really we had this weekend was Newcastle versus Chelsea because it was a 6-pointer, both exactly the same points, both exactly the same goal difference going into the game. Obviously, the advantage Newcastle has is we're at home, which Chelsea don't tend to perform very well at home against us, to be honest, going back traditionally. Yeah. But yeah, we managed to win the game 2-0. But it was a funny game.
It was interesting. Just before you get into the nitty, because my perspective of it as it was happening, I was at Wembley for the non-league finals day, so my only knowledge of what was happening was the group chat, and the group chat is obviously the podcast panel, so it is myself, a United fan, and then it is 2 Newcastle fans and a Chelsea fan, and every single person in that chat was moaning about their team that day. Which
yeah, and I can kind of understand that as well, because the first half we were very, very good. We were definitely the better team. I think Dave was quite right to moan about Chelsea because they were playing a funny system where they were trying to boot the ball up. It just wasn't working. Maybe it was just they weren't expecting the level of Newcastle's press to be the way it is. Newcastle played a slightly different formation, which I think threw Maresca a little bit at first as well, and he didn't quite adapt to it quick enough. So we went a goal up, and I think we were well worthy of it. We were definitely the best team. But then a moment that kind of changed the game, Nicholas Jackson went and got himself sent off, straight red card for an elbow into the face of Botman.
That didn't show up in Match of the Day, but again, going back to sort of how the group chat was going, there were a couple of incidents before that where either Jackson or Caicedo could have gone off as well, if I'm
I wouldn't go so far as that. I think Caicedo managed to get away with 18 fouls or something like that in that game, without getting a yellow card, and quite a few of them were yellow card offences. I don't think he deserved a red at all, but if he had got a yellow slightly earlier, he would not have been able to be as aggressive as he was in the second half. And the thing is, he's then playing against Bruno with a yellow. You know, all our midfielders had yellows, so they couldn't quite be as aggressive back against them. And he was just able to then dominate a little bit because of that. But I felt that was maybe slightly unfair that he didn't get a yellow, because he did just as bad things as everybody else. Anyway, but that's it. I think Jackson went underneath somebody. You know that way when somebody's jumping up in the air? Yeah. I think it was Botman again, who was jumping up for a big header, and Jackson just went underneath and pushed him, so Botman basically fell lying on his back.
Harry Kane,
and that's a nasty challenge, right? It is the Harry Kane special, and it's a nasty one, that, because I've been in that position playing, and that wins you. If you fall, you're falling 4 feet, landing in your back, right? All right, it's grass, but it's still, it'll take the breath at you. Big time.
And, I know obviously it's different sports, but in rugby league, at least, I don't know about rugby union, but that's a foul every time. If somebody's in the air, you can't touch them. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you can't touch them.
I don't think that would work in football, because you're jumping up rightly with each other to get a challenge. But
if you
should definitely punish the people that go underneath, because that's not challenging. You don't challenge for the ball, for ducking under and moving in. You don't, you have to jump yourself. But anyway, he didn't get a card for that one. Maybe he should have, but it's one of those ones where I think the refs should be better at that, but they're not. But then obviously he goes in with I don't want to call it an elbow. It was more like a forearm. And me and Mick, when we saw it back, Mick was, I think, about 10 seconds ahead of me or something like that. So he saw it before me, and he said red. And then I'd said myself, it looks like a red to me, because the first thing you noticed is Jackson looking towards Botman as Botman's kind of ducking down. And Jackson looks at him, and then the arm goes in, and then the head goes away. And basically when the referee looked at it, they gave the red card. But I think some pundits have said they think it was harsh because he wasn't trying to do him. He's just trying to like put his arm in to jump. But I don't see any jumping going on. I see Botman bending, and I see him going in, but his legs aren't really doing anything.
A lot of.
So I don't know.
I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, he was expecting Botman to jump, so he's just going to try and muscle him out the way." But then equally, those people are saying, "Oh, you know, he wasn't meaning to elbow him in the head; it was accidental, but it's still a red card because his elbows touch his head." And I don't like that kind of logic in that. Just because that's the outcome doesn't mean that it was dangerous play. I think he definitely meant to elbow him, but I you know, just going off on a tangent, I don't think accidental contact like that, however bad it looks, should be. It should
some
be.
Of the worst challenges you'll see are accidents.
It should be the action that you started. The action that you started is dangerous or reckless or, you know, unsporting. Or whatever, that should be it, not the millimetre either way that you've actually hit him. But that's by the by. But I think it was a fair enough red card. Watching it back, I can't see how you can.
He was on Botman trying to. It looked to me like he was at various points trying to either injure or push. Maybe they'd thought Botman's maybe a risk injury wise, have a go at him or something like that. Maybe he'd been briefed on that. That's happened. So
as much as anything, you know, they're lumping it up to him. And Newcastle are playing a back three of Schär, Butman and Byrne, and that's quite a big back three. So you have got to try and be physical.
That was Dave's
not going to get anywhere.
Issue. That was Dave's issue. Is why would he do that? Why would Chelsea suddenly start doing that against Newcastle, who are well suited to play that way with the big men at the back, with a little guy like Jackson up front? It doesn't really make any sense. And that was his criticism, basically, of why did Chelsea start like that? But actually, after the sending off, obviously it's half time, and then the game changed. And sometimes you get this, like people might say, "Oh, Newcastle were terrible after that, Chelsea were great." But sometimes when a team goes down to 10 men, it does change the game, and sometimes the 10 men can be better than the 11. It's weird, but it does. We see it happen from time to time, and it was just one of those games. It looked like they had 11 men, and we were down to 10 for that half after that. Our midfield just, I don't know what they were doing. I think they were pushing too much for the second, and we'd changed their system and put 3 in midfield, but it wasn't working. And Bruno was wandering off, whereas him and Tonali had sat there covering midfield. Now Bruno was wandering off everywhere, and Tonali was getting left on his own. So I think, although he didn't have quite as good a second half, I more blame the tactics and what Bruno was doing for that. But the main thing is, Chelsea had like one shot on target. I think officially they might have had 2, but it was going over. Enzo Fernandez shot was going over. I don't think the keeper even needed to save it. But Cucurella's shot theoretically was hitting the target if Pope hadn't saved it. Wasn't a spectacular save, but a decent save. But really, that's the thing. We never really gave them any chances, and that's why Byrne, I think, was man of the match, because he played well in the first half as well. But in the second half, you know, he was just eating up anything that came into him, and he just controlled it. And, you know, he actually was involved in the second goal as well. He passed the ball to Bruno, and then we got a lucky deflection for the second. But once the second got in, that was game over. Obviously, it's a huge game in terms of what it means, because we are now 3 points ahead of one of our direct rivals, and that's a game less that they've got. So, when we'd said last week, and we'd been talking in the chat, if it was a draw, it was a kind of meh for both teams. But whoever wins, it was going to be a great one for them and a really bad one for the team that lost. I think the big advantage for Chelsea is some of the other results we're going to talk about as well, though. For example, as one we already alluded to earlier on, is Man City only managing a draw against lowly Southampton.
I mean... Yeah, that was, like I said, it was everyone went into St Mary's with a Southampton hat on, saying, we're just going to eke out a 0-0, and we're going to cheer every tackle, and we're going to cheer every throw-in and every goal kick and everything like that. And really, and that is, I think, the best part about British fan culture is you find something to celebrate in the middle of a pile of shit like that, you know? Very few other cultures can do that, I think.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. Small victories. Celebrate the small victories.
Exactly. I mean,
we're just petty as fuck. That's what it is.
I've always loved
really
a good
petty.
backs to the wall defensive effort and pick somebody off on the counter sort of win. Especially
like a team like Southampton, they owe MD nothing. They don't owe anybody any to go out and play any good football.
Yeah.
They can do whatever the hell they want. If that's the way they want to play the game, it's up to you. Practically every other team's broke them down this year. So
what they did owe was they owed their fans effort in making sure that they didn't finish with that low points total. That's what they owed, and it was very touch and go whether they were going to do it. So an effort where everyone's committed and focused and disciplined defensively, and not giving City a sniff is exactly what they owed the fans, and I think the fans responded to that as well.
Yeah. So I think that's a good thing for Chelsea as well, that they only went a point ahead, and then Forest only got closed the gap by 1 point as well, because they surprisingly only managed a draw against Leicester, another relegated team already. But that's what happens sometimes when teams are relegated. They suddenly play a bit better football, and actually Leicester could have won that game. I think, if they had done a bit better with some of their chances at the end, Leicester might have actually won that. I think
they had
Forest,
a really good one at the end, didn't they?
Yeah. But Forest just weren't quite good enough. I mean, if you consider this team, Leicester team's been losing 4 or 5 goals to teams sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. They just didn't do enough. Ultimately, there was some strange team selections. Like he didn't play Anderson and then brought him on later on, and so a few other bits and bobs as well, which I wasn't sure what he was doing. But certainly it wasn't a great result for Forest.
No, it wasn't.
For Champions League.
It's similar. They went behind early on, and that meant they had nothing to sit on. And because they're such a counter-attacking team, if they've then got to take the team to somebody who's, another team who's quite happy to sit back,
they find it difficult. Yeah,
there's gaps there. Obviously, I think they've had a few players missing, particularly in defence, which hasn't helped. But yeah, just that sort of magic formula that they had over the winter is just slightly gone a bit, hasn't it?
You're right in that they like to be the team that have got something to hold on to. So if you can stop them scoring and get one against them so that they have to come at you, it doesn't really suit the way they want to play. And I think we've had good results against Forest this year, and it's because we've always scored the first goal.
I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't help that Murillo is missing as well, and he is.
For sure, maybe defensively they would have been a bit
Milenkovic is
better,
good as well, but obviously just that partnership has been excellent all season.
Yeah.
So that's something. But then Leicester have offered nothing in front of goal all season. So to concede 2 against them, and the second goal, for all it was a nice run from Buonanotte, it was also one of those ones where he goes past 2 or 3 defenders, and you just think, like, just one of you kick him into the stands,
Yeah, especially a team like Forest that are kind of known to just do that, to be, pragmatic like that. It was a strange one for them. And it could cost them. I mean, the one thing that we should say is they're now guaranteed European football. So they are at minimum in the Conference League, probably more likely Europa, depending on what happens elsewhere. But they are still in the hunt for Champions League as well. And I wouldn't say it's in their hands anymore, because even if they win their next 2 games, but they actually play Chelsea, don't they? So it kind of is in their hands, because if Forest beat Chelsea, then
you would still expect them to win their next game, which is against West Ham, and we were worse than West Ham
as well.
West Ham played well. It's at West Ham. But you would expect them to get something out of that and remain in touching distance with Chelsea, and then all they've got to do is beat Chelsea to leapfrog them. The wrinkle in that is that Villa are right smack in the middle of the 2 of them, and their 2 games are against Spurs and Man United, who just do not care about the league, and they play them either side of the league final.
And we've been seeing them just playing really poorly in the Premier League recently. I just can't see anything but 6 points for Villa.
Yeah, if they don't win,
I think they get 69 points. Villa gets 69 points for me.
If they don't win those 2 games, they should have any European invitation rescinded, basically, because I
mean, that's the thing. Like, you look at everybody. So Newcastle have got 2 games left. One against Arsenal, who are right above them now. Theoretically, reach for the stars. if we beat Arsenal, we go ahead of them in the table, and we could actually finish as runners-up in the league, which would be absolutely fantastic, and it would be quite funny as well.
Yeah,
but
who's your last game against?
Really, we only need 3 points. Everton, we're at home.
Right.
Now, Everton are a bit annoying, but the fact that it is a home game, I think would suit us. I think Everton aren't as good away from home as they're at Goodison. So,
but also, this weekend's the last ever game at Goodison. There's going to be a load of emotion pouring out about that, and they just will not reach the same level away to Newcastle in the next game. That's what I'm hoping anyway. And that our guys, if we need the 3 points, are big time up for it, because 69 points pretty much guarantees it for you. So we only need that. Yeah. I'd love to see us go out and beat Arsenal though, and I think we have got a chance, because I know we'll maybe get to this in the predictions, but might as well talk about this one just now, because I think Rice has got a hamstring injury. It seems doubtful for me they would rush him back for the game against Newcastle. And Mikel Merino gets sent off, so he's out for the season, I think, pretty much at this point in terms of suspension. It was second yellow, though, wasn't it? So,
well, how many games do you miss for that? Just one?
Just the one, I think. But, I mean, that's the only one that he needs to, isn't it? So
it's the only one, as far as I'm concerned. So, we could, but it's at Arsenal's place, so, still going to be a very tough game.
It really depends on how much Arsenal care about finishing second. If they've packed the season in already, and you'd be tempted to think that, but then the way they came back against Liverpool at the weekend suggests that they are still playing for pride, if nothing else. So
I think they'll want to beat us, because we're a bit with their bogey team this year. We've actually played them 3 times this year already, and we've beat them 3 times. I
mean, it's not just
home and away.
Eddie Howe has had Mikel Arteta's number since they both came in. It's simple.
I could see us playing the 3 at the back, the kind of 5 at the back system that he did against Arsenal, and just really try to annoy them. And I'm up for that. We'll see what happens. But I would love. Even a draw would be a decent result, but if we can get a win, that's it. Champions League's done. Everybody else needs kind of 2 wins to guarantee it, but you've got to imagine it won't be that. Everybody's not going to win every game, so somebody's going to mess up somewhere, and who knows what the actual will be. But
I mean,
Arsenal could still go out. They could still not qualify. At this point,
City are the interesting one, because they've got the cup final this weekend, so they don't play Bournemouth until Wednesday. And Bournemouth have dropped off, and City beat them quite comfortably in the FA Cup. But it's the 2 days after the cup final. It's just something could happen there. You never know.
But Champions League is more important to City than the cup final. I think there's more chance of Crystal Palace upsetting them in the cup final than there is that, if that makes sense. But don't get me wrong, I'd love to see City drop some points and put pressure on themselves to get through. But then, looking at the results, you've got to fancy them, ourselves, and Arsenal, last game is, anybody else.
City's last game is against Fulham. And Fulham are not just on the beach; they've built a swimming pool into their stand, so that's where they all are. So
absolutely have. And I guess that's really about it for kind of this week. That's what's been happening in the league. There's nothing really happening at the bottom of the table other than some make fun of Spurs and Man United for being down there, but they're nowhere close to any relegation, and they've got bigger fish to fry at the moment, quite frankly. And we will be reviewing the Euro finals a little bit more when we get into next week. We were going to talk about our kind of shithouse of the week, if you like. Which I guess is the Liverpool fans.
Yeah, we haven't really got an item for Carl to bring up on the screen, I'm afraid, because it's game footage that will get copyrighted. There's not really an image we can give. But it was quite striking in the match against Arsenal. Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we've discussed previously, he's announced that he's leaving Liverpool. He's on his way to Real Madrid on a free transfer in the summer. He's lining up to come on as a sub, and Liverpool fans are singing, there's only one Conor Bradley who's the right back who's going to replace him from the youth team. There's only one Steven Gerrard who is Mr. Liverpool, stayed with him his whole career, didn't win anything, apart from the Champions League.
I mean, he almost went to Chelsea.
He said he was tempted,
going to
but
another
decided against
English
it.
team.
But anyway, so Trent gets subbed on and gets quite loudly booed. I wouldn't say it was the whole ground because there was quite a few fans I think were cheering in sort of opposition to that, but quite loudly booed as he came on, which is, I think it's a bit of a surprising reaction just on that. But then for a few minutes after that, every time he took a touch, he was getting booed again, like he was, like he was playing for a rival club or like he was an ex-player coming back.
Do you know what annoys me about it though? It's the idea that Liverpool are somehow magically special, that skin on in the media to do with this. It's this whole, you can't tell Liverpool fans how to feel. It's up to them how they feel. Like if this was happening at Forest because they knew one of their players was leaving, and they were booing them, they wouldn't be talking about it again and again. They would just be like, oh well, that he's getting booed. You can understand it, and then you move on. It's because it's Liverpool. It's a big thing because he's obviously had so much success there. But
I think it's they are they're, from a Liverpool fan's perspective. If you've got a kid who's grown up in Liverpool, who's been in the academy since he was a kid, really that should be all you ever want. If you're a Scouser, is to have a long, successful career with Liverpool. That's the fans' view on it.
I mean, you can say that, but unfortunately, because
they're threatened by the fact that Real Madrid, they're a bigger club, they're shiny, and nobody says no to Real Madrid. Yeah.
Just a bigger club. I don't like it because I'm a fan of English football. I'd rather the English clubs were bigger. And I know they're getting big at the moment because they are challengers to these big clubs, but they're still not as big as Real Madrid and Barcelona.
On the pitch, they can compete, but when it comes to prestige, when it comes to just lifestyle, it's Madrid is a much nicer city than Liverpool from my experience of both of those places.
We talked about this a little bit last week because obviously it was announced that he was leaving, but
and I just don't understand.
I wouldn't
hold on.
boo him if it was me.
Think about it. Just the name, a pool of livers. This just sounds gross and disgusting.
You've been to Liverpool. It's actually like really Liverpool.
I mean,
as a city.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I just think my perspective on it is you want a local kid to come up and make it through your club. That is a story that anyone can get behind, no matter what club you support. That's a story everyone can get behind. However, Trent has come through and he has won everything there is to win for Liverpool, and he's only 25. He's been one of their best players in one of their best periods in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. But not only that, but he's run down his contract, fine, but he's made no noises about anything. He's not slagged the club off in the press. He's not said, well, they offered me this much money and I nearly drove my car into a tree like Ashley Cole did. He's just got on with his job. He's played really well this season. So he's not kicked up a fuss, and then he's left at the end of his contract and said, I'm going to try something new. He couldn't have acted more professional, and he's achieved everything that there is to achieve at Liverpool.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how anyone can have a problem with him doing that.
Because he should have left earlier and got a fee for the club, but the club didn't want to sell him either, so they didn't want to let him go.
Real Madrid wanted to buy him in January, and Liverpool said no. And I reckon Trent will have wanted to have celebrated a title win in front of fans, which he didn't get the chance to do in 2020.
Yeah. I just think it's a bit, but I'm not a fan of Liverpool fans as it is, and never have been. I think they are one of the worst fan bases in the country, to be perfectly honest with you. Not in terms of doing anything particularly bad, just that they feel that they're more special than everybody else, and that everything is against them, and there's a conspiracy against them all the time, and nobody else understands them. And
I don't know if it was you or Davey said it, but they sing "You'll Never Walk Alone" before the match, and obviously it's a line, but it does mean something quite fundamental to the people of Liverpool, that song. And it's all about solidarity, and it's all about once a red, always a red. And then you turn on somebody who literally could not be more one of your own if he tried, just because he's going somewhere else. That's
the mentality up there. It's like Everton when they were hounding the players, and then all the players leave. Everton still hate Anthony Gordon, who went to Newcastle. They were literally blocking his car for getting out after they lost the game. At one point, he was a young laddie. making them roll down the window, and doing all that sort of stuff. And they did it and Everton fans would say, "Oh, some of the players like so and so get out and actually discussed it. And that's why we respect them." But Anthony Gordon just wanted to drive away. He's a young kid, and you're stopping him in his car.
Yeah.
You just shouldn't be doing stuff like that. And that's where I feel that they think they can do whatever they want. And for them, they feel like they have more of a connection with their club than the rest of the country does with theirs. It's not true. It's just they behave like idiots more often, in my opinion. But there you go.
Yeah.
If you're a Liverpool fan and you think I'm wrong, feel free to leave us a comment. That's fine. I know every club's got bad fans. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about that level of kind of entitlement and that kind of victim mentality that you guys have. So there you go. It's my experience. Anything else this week, Ryan? That's about it, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. I watched Aldershot win their first ever trophy on Sunday in the FA Trophy final.
Nice.
3 quite good goals. They were playing the team from the league round.
No.
You will bring them up. We kind of talked about some of the bigger games coming up already. In terms of it's all going to be about Newcastle's game, Chelsea's game, Forest's game, Villa's game. All the teams that's going for the Champions League. That's the ones that we're going to be looking at.
I mean, we're not obviously predicting this for prediction league's purposes, but how do you reckon the FA Cup final is going to go?
I think if you're a betting man, you've got to go with City. I think they played Palace recently, and Palace haven't done well against City this season, really. So I don't see it, but you never know, because you could look at the Newcastle game, and we were in exactly the same position when we were in the League Cup final. Liverpool had beaten us twice. They were kind of a team that we just didn't play well against. We went in the final and beat them. So you just never know. I'd love to see them win it, because why not?
That game recently, Palace went 2-0 up. They should have gone 3-0 up. There was a really avoidable offside that chalked off their third goal. But then they did collapse after that, and Kevin De Bruyne stepped up and just did his thing. And if there is a place for City players to do that, it's Wembley. It's the same as Forest. I think Forest were in worse form at the time than Palace are in now. But Forest just got overawed by the fact that they were at Wembley, and there's just a risk that Palace might do the same.
Yeah, and that might just happen, So especially when it's your first time. I think that happened to Newcastle a little bit against you guys as well in the first cup final, that they just didn't turn up, Some other factors as well, injuries and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, the players just looked much more confident the next time, because they had done it before and they'd had that loss. So we'll see. But you're a Man United fan, so obviously you want Palace to win. But I think most neutrals would like to see Palace win, because, why not? It's somebody new.
I think the only people who don't want Palace to win, apart from City fans, are the teams trying to get to 8th spot. Because if Palace win, it does them out of place. They take a Europa League spot,
absolutely, for sure. And one of them probably is Brighton, and Brighton don't like Crystal Palace, so probably they don't want. They'd probably rather see City win it, but nobody else. But that and the European games this week is where the focus is going to be, and we'll see what happens when we're back next week. So thanks for watching.
Preview of the Europa League final next week.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week. Leave us any comments. Liking and subscribe would help us out a lot if you can as well. See you next week. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.